Hello, hello. Welcome to the Poppy Field Paint Along. My name is Allie, and I do these live paint alongs every Monday here on my Facebook page at 5 Eastern. I apologize if you are catching this and I'm a few minutes late. We had a little bit of an issue with the first live that I set up. Didn't show up and nobody was watching it because it wasn't there. So I'm just jumping in a few minutes late. I'm not normally late. But if you're new here, I just want to say a special welcome to you, and I'm glad that you found me. And I'm glad that you're here. So I do these free demos every Monday, and so we do this, we do it on an 8x10 panel, and I teach something a little bit different each week. And this week I am going to be teaching the Poppy Paint Along. So many of you are actually going to be painting this with me. I offer a download on my website, which you can find at alliecasestudio.com. And the download has the outlines. So many of you already have your outlines on your panel and you're ready to go. If you don't have your outlines yet, don't worry about it. You can always watch this as a replay and you can still get the outlines on my panel. I see you all jumping in. Hi Gail, hi Kathy, hi Dawn and Helen. We've got all the regulars here. I love it. Welcome everybody. Hi Judy, thank you for sharing. Yes, please share this demo if you know anyone else who might be interested in a free little class. I always appreciate that. So, all right, we're getting a little bit of a late start, so why don't we just jump right in and get started painting the poppies? All right, here we go, guys. I am going to bring the camera in and set it up so that you can see what I am doing here, and I always try to adjust it so you can kind of see my palettes, see the colors I'm mixing. Hi Adrian. Adrian, you're painting. I love it. Yes, you guys, let me know if you are painting with me. It's always fun to see who is taking part and painting with us. And also, if you're painting, I would love for you guys to share your paintings in my group, Allie's Paint Friends. That's where everybody shares their pieces when they're done. Hi Debbie. All right, Debbie, you're watching. Okay, maybe painting later, right? So the nice thing about painting later, as many of you know, is then you can pause the video and kind of paint at your own speed. So I know some of you do it both ways. You like to paint with me live, which I always love, but I know a lot of you like to watch it live and then paint it later. So this is what the outlines download looks like, and I just painted over these outlines using a skinny little script liner brush. You guys can find these at Hobby Lobby, at hobbylobby.com, and have it ordered, and they're like $2. These are great for doing outlines. And I made this purple from alizarin crimson, Payne's gray, and white. And I should mention, I am using golden fluid acrylics. That is my paint of choice. And if you get the download, I have a list of all the paint colors that I am using in this demo. Hi Angela and Laura. Hi everyone. All right, so we've already got the outlines on. And then the first step that I always like to do is to start washing in the shadows. So I am using a little, well, it's not little, but I'm using a flat tip brush here. This is a number 3. And I'm gonna water my paint down. I'm gonna make a nice little puddle here of alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. So those two together make kind of like a dirty purple. And I'm going to use that to just start washing in my shadows. All right, you guys can see everything, right? Good. Okay, so do y'all have a reflection on the screen? Maybe a little bit. Let's see if we can tilt that. I think that's better. Is that a little bit better? Maybe. I think that looks good. Okay, so I'm looking for the areas that are dark. Let's just adjust this a bit. There we go. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so let's find those dark areas. So the first dark area that I see is like kind of in the hollow here of this poppy. So I'm just going to start finding that shape and wash in those shadows. So I'm looking at the outlines that are on there and I'm comparing which side of the outline is dark, which side of it is light, and I'm just washing it in. So over here I've got the dark shadow continuing all the way up to this kind of bright edge of the poppy. So I'm going to bring it up there, bring this shadow up here. Now it kind of stays bright in that crevice, so I'm just going to leave that little window there. And I'm going to try to follow along with your comments here. Let me know if you guys have any questions while I'm working. All right. Sorry, I'm just pulling this up so I can see your comments. All right, there we go. Okay, continuing finding those shadows. So up here, I'm just gonna go start washing in the background a little bit. Gotta mute my video. I swear I always have technical difficulties. Okay, I don't wanna hear myself twice. Okay, so I'm washing in the background here because the background is darker than the edge of the flower. See how the edge is kind of glowing? So we're gonna push the background darker behind it. And we're continuing to do that over here. And now I'm seeing this is all a pretty bright chunk. Then we've got a dark shadow in here, little dark notch right there. So when I created this outlines template, I was basically trying to outline like the major highlights and shadows in the image. So that's kind of what I was looking for. I didn't outline everything because then it gets really busy. So I'm just trying to find the major breaks in highlight and shadow. So if you're trying to do the same process on your own, that's just kind of a good thing to remember is this is just a roadmap. This is not outlining every single shape that you see. All right, moving along. We've got it dark behind the edge of the flower, so I'm just going to continue with that dark. Then we've got these little buds here. This is dark here, and I guess maybe the rest of it is kind of dark too. Now on this one, it's actually dark behind it. You see how it's kind of glowing and there's a dark background behind it. So there I'm going to wash it dark behind it on the left side. The right side's pretty bright, so I'm going to leave that. This large shape. So these are kind of extra flowers in the background that are blurred because they are not in focus. So that's why they're just kind of large blobs back there. Moving along here, this stem is pretty dark all the way down, I believe. So I'm just going to take that all the way down. This one's dark. And finding some of these kind of easy to spot shapes and putting those in at the beginning, that makes it easier for you to kind of make sense of everything towards the beginning. So in the beginning, I know it's a little bit confusing to find the shapes. So I think it's always good to start with what's easy. Try to make it as easy as we can. All right, so it's dark in here. Now I'm getting into some of those slightly more complicated areas. Dark in there. This whole petal here is dark. Let's see, this whole kind of blossom here is pretty dark. All right. Moving along. And this is pretty dark down here. So I'm using the same color on the whole thing, and I'm not really worrying about what the actual color of things is. I'm just looking at light right now. I'm comparing light and dark, and I'm finding the shadows. And by kind of simplifying and not worrying about color at this stage, it helps me to move more quickly as I work, and just kind of ignore a lot of the details that I might get hung up on otherwise, and really just focus on the light. Because light is what is most important in any painting. I love color, but you don't have to have your colors exactly the same as what you see, and it'll still be really accurate as far as creating the actual shapes and the form, as long as your light and dark values feel like they're pretty accurate. Let's see, I'm gonna just put a little bit of that texture there. Here we've got this little tiny dark chunk there, another little tiny dark chunk right there. This is pretty dark, this little blurry flower here in the background. And don't worry about these kind of background flowers, making those just right. Those aren't going to matter much. Our focus is going to be on these flowers in the foreground. Let me know, guys, if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, or if there's anything you just want to say. Feel free to put that into the comments, because I am watching here over to the side on my other screen. So I should be able to do a pretty good job of answering them this time. Okay, I think this feels like a pretty good first wash. So maybe put this a little darker. Now we're going to go back and do the second pass of color. So in this second pass, I'm going to use the same two colors, alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. But now I'm going to use less water, and I'm going to go back in and find the darkest areas. So this first pass was just kind of finding like the general shapes, and now I'm going to pump it up a little bit. All right, so going back with more alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. And I should mention too that if you get the download for this, it comes with the reference image. So I can see right now I've got a little bit of a glare on my iPad screen. So if you are painting this to the replay, you'll have that reference image. You'll have access to that too. But I always suggest looking at your reference image on a screen. Like you see how I have mine on my iPad? I never print my reference image. Never, never, never. And the reason is the colors get so washed out when you print them. You can see the color like a million times better when you look at it on a screen versus a printout. So I really, really stress don't print out these images. You know, if you have to use more than one screen, you know, most of us have more than one screen, I think. But a great way to watch the demo is if you download the Facebook Watch app to your smart TV, you can watch the demo on your great big TV, which I'm sure makes it a lot easier to follow along. So then if you have a tablet or something, you could save your reference image to your tablet and look at it there, which is what I am doing. Okay, finding these dark stems. This one doesn't stay dark well, kind of stays dark the whole way down. This little bud here's pretty dark. Got some little dark bits on this one, and then it's pretty dark to the side of it. So adding this second layer of color definitely starts to give it more depth. Hi Elena, nice to see you. I've missed you. You used to do a lot of these, and you always do such beautiful work. All right, just pushing those darker shapes. Still with alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. And you can see I'm kind of chipping away at those outlines, so we don't really need to like see them perfectly. So I'm just kind of layering this color right over them because ultimately we don't really want to see all those outlines. Those were just our roadmap. Makes the painting feel more finished as we kind of continue to bury those and have those be more hidden. So these are just the darker areas that I'm pushing a little bit darker to give more depth to our piece. Oh, Elaine, you got new internet service. Yay, that's right. That was the reason why you weren't able to make it to all of these. I remember now. I'm glad to hear that. All right, pushing this a little darker. We're almost done with this layer of color, I think. Got a little carried away there. I'll push that little bit a little darker there. All right. Yep, I think we are just about finished here. I'm gonna make this whole area pretty dark. Okay, so our next step, now that we found the shadows, is going to be to do a wash of a complementary color underpainting. So complementary means opposite on the color wheel, but I will have to tell you I don't always do the true and perfect opposite. I kind of push it and use the colors that I think are going to work best. But I do think about if the top layer is going to be warm, I put down cool first. If the top layer is going to be cool, I put down warm first. Hi Lynn, this is your first paint along. Welcome, I love that. So you're watching now, I'm gonna paint later. That sounds perfect. I think that's a great plan. You kind of get the rundown of how it's going to look, and then you can kind of paint it on your own time. But I will say don't wait too long, because when things are kind of at the top of our mind, we do them and we're excited, and you don't want to push it back and then not get around to it, because I know you're going to be glad you took just this 1 hour to create this piece. I think everybody who does these can attest to that. Maybe they take a little longer than an hour, but it's still an amazing amount of work that you all get done in just an hour, and I know you're always glad you did. Okay, I think we're gonna call the underpainting washes done. All right, so we're gonna do that, the overall wash now. We were just doing the shadows before. So the background is a lot of greens and cool tones. So we're gonna pick a warm tone for that. And since the flowers are obviously very bright red and orange, we are going to pick a cooler tone for that. So let's talk about the background first. I think I would like to do 2 different colors in the background. Some of it I'm going to wash in with quinacridone magenta, one of my favorite colors from Golden. And some of it I am going to wash in with pyrrole red. And I'm going to break that up because I think it will be kind of fun, and because I want to bring in some pops of red underpainting in the background that are going to mirror the red that we're going to use in the poppy. So I like to kind of think about that when I'm doing my underpainting washes, thinking about what colors I'm going to use later and picking underpainting colors that are going to kind of jive with that. So I think I want to do those brighter oranges down towards the bottom, which is the pyrrole red, and I'm going to do the magenta up towards the top. So let's start with the magenta. And this color is just so amazing. So I watered it down. It's just straight magenta, watered down. And I'm just going over the whole background. I know I've got like some little bits of red that are kind of blurred in there. But I'm just going to use this over the whole background. So it's really, really thin, so it's going to dry. It's going to dry nicely. I need to catch this glare that we've got here because I'm seeing it on the screen. All right. That might be a little bit better. We'll see. Okay. All right, So now I'm just gonna bring this down a little bit more. Okay, now I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna clean my brush off, and I'm going to put the Pyrrole Red down for the underpainting under the lower part. And I'm watering that down, and I'm just, well, maybe a little too watered down. I'm gonna wash this in down here. All the areas that I see that will be green are what I am washing in with the red. Now it feels like it kind of is confusing for your brain, I know, because we're flipping it. So it gets a little bit tricky as we're layering our color in to remember what's what. But once we get through those kind of weird stages, I promise it all comes together and it looks very cool. I've done it before, trust me. Right. Cover up that little bed. Okay, I think what's left is all going to be underpainting for the poppies. We'll do that little stem, we'll do red. Okay, so underpainting color for the poppies, obviously the opposite of red is green, but I'm not sure that I want to put green down for these. I think I'm going to pick a different color cool. So the poppies are going to be warm red. I think I'm actually going to wash them in with purple. I'm going to use Permanent Violet Dark for that. There's not a huge rhyme or reason as to why I'm doing that instead of green. I guess it's just because I think that it'll be nice. That's my main reason, but purple can go both ways. Purple can be a warm tone or it can serve as a cool. So in this situation, I am going to use it as a cool. So there we go. Elena says, great combination. Closer colors are usually warmer. Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. That's good thinking. Okay, so we're gonna wash the rest of it in with purple. And this purple is actually not that different from the magenta that we put in the background, but it's cooler. This color just makes a good underpainting for a lot of things. If you're ever kind of questioning what color you should put down for an underpainting, if you've watched some of my demos before and you've kind of gotten familiar with this process, but maybe you're doing a neutral and you're just not sure what color to do for the underpainting, you really can't go wrong with purple, especially this Permanent Violet Dark. If you're ever questioning it, just use the purple. It's gonna be good. And I think the reason for that is naturally shadows are purple, or at least that's what I think, and that's how I paint shadows most of the time. And I think using a purple instead of just a blah shadow color is just more interesting. So why not? Okay, so now we've got some color on the whole panel, which I like. Okay, so underpainting washes pretty much done. Some of my Pyrrole Red, because it was so watered down, it kind of fell down the panel a little bit. And so I think I'd like to actually go back and pump that up a little more. So I'm just gonna go back to my wash of Pyrrole Red, and I grab a little bit more of it. I'm gonna go back and just push that color a little bit darker. Just got a little bit more watered down than what I wanted. And these golden acrylics are just so amazing. They just have so much pigment that you can have the paint really thin, and it's kind of incredible how much color it still pops with. Okay, so now we've got our washes all done and on there. All right, so now is when I would normally start kind of carving out the flower colors, but I feel like this is all still a bit wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and find my darkest darks again, because they don't feel super dark to me, and I really want to anchor those dark centers. So I'm going to go back to my smaller brush and I'm going to go back to my recipe that I was using for dark, which was alizarin crimson and Payne's gray, but now I'm gonna use a little bit more of the Payne's gray to make it more of like a blue dark. And I think I'm just gonna have the paint straight right now. It's not gonna be watered down. And so I'm just gonna push those dark areas a little bit darker just to kind of anchor them a bit. And then hopefully the rest of my paint will be dry and we can start layering on top. All right. There's just a few places that are this really dark. Overall, this is a pretty bright painting. Got some bits of dark here. But when you find these darkest darks, if you get those in the right places and then you get your lightest lights in the right places, everything else just kind of comes together. It all just starts to make sense once you've got those anchor points in there. Okay, this stem got a little washed out there. All right, that feels pretty good. So now let's go in with the background color. So I'm gonna start with the more neutral background up towards the top. And sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out how to make this glare not be so bad. Let's see if I turn off some of these lights. Maybe that's better? Nah. Okay, doing the best I can here. All right, the green neutral here. So I'm going to make that using, let's see, what are we going to use? We're going to use Payne's Gray and a little bit of Hansa Yellow Opaque. If I can get my bottle cleared out. The bottles always get gunked up. Okay, Payne's Gray, a little bit of Hansa Yellow Opaque, and some white, which is going to dull it down. Now I'm going to start thinning my paint with glazing medium. So I'm using Liquitex glazing medium. You can use Golden, you can use any brand. I'm not particular about that, but now after I've done the underpainting, I don't thin my paint with water anymore. I'm thinning it with the glazing medium because that's going to allow for like greater transparency and still keeping like the same consistency and body to the paint. I'm gonna put a little bit more. So this is Payne's Gray, Hansa Yellow Opaque, and white. And I'm going to start dropping some of this into the background. But I'm going to be really careful to leave some of my underpainting color. And I think this brush is too small. I'm gonna switch to a bigger one. I always say use the biggest brush you can to get the job done. I'm gonna go up to this one. This is a 6, but this is a different brand, so this is a Blick Essentials brush. They run a little bit differently. But just gonna drop some of this color in here. See how I'm kind of changing the direction of my brush strokes. And I like how this muted green looks with that magenta. That's fun. Okay, up towards the top, I feel like this muted green gets lighter. So I'm going to put some white in there. Some more white to lighten it up a bit. Just also gonna mute it down a little bit more. I'm gonna add some more glaze to it. Let's see, Rob says the first light you turned off isn't necessary, it's causing the glare. Okay, well thanks Rob, I'm gonna try that again. Yeah, now I can see more of the glare. It's different every day. Let's see, I don't know if that made it any better. Let's try, there. I think that helped us, right? Let's try that one. It's always kind of a process. I think that made it a little bit better on the painting at least. Hopefully. Yep. Elena says better. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I appreciate your help with this, guys. I'm doing a lot of things at once. Okay, so new recipe of green. It's the same 3 colors, just has more white. And I'm gonna put this up towards the top. Maybe a little more yellow too. All right, Lynn says much better. Thank you, I appreciate it. I wouldn't want you guys to go through this whole demo and not be able to see what I'm doing. Okay. There. Okay, so I think that's enough up at the top. And as we come down, maybe we've got a little window of this kind of sage green right here. A little bit right there. We've got some of it on this little bud, kind of catching the highlight. We've got some more over here on this little bud. The center of the bud is darker. I might have to come back to that. Okay, so now the green down towards the bottom gets more of an intense green. So we won't be able to make that green using the Payne's Gray Enhance the Yellow because Payne's Gray is kind of a dull blue. So we're going to make that brighter green using Phthalo Green Blue shade. But that is like a crazy intense green. So we're gonna have to dull that down a bit. But we're gonna use Phthalo Green Blue shade, Enhance the Yellow Opaque. And we'll put a little bit of titanium white in there. Need more Hansa yellow. And then we're going to dull it down a pinch with that Pyrrole Red Light. If we didn't add the Pyrrole, it would be like, give you a headache green. So adding that Pyrrole Red to it just makes it easier to look at. All right. I'm gonna add a little glaze to it to thin it out so that I can see the red underpainting coming through. And I think I'm getting close to the color that I want here. Kind of experimenting. I might just put it on and see how it looks. Let's do that. Okay, so yeah, that works. Really contrast that red background. Might be too dark. I'm gonna put some of it in and then maybe I'll brighten it up a little. Okay, so I'm looking for kind of the areas that feel a little bit darker in the background. And then I'm gonna go back. We did purple here and it was actually going to be a green area. Now that I look at it, yeah, this is gonna be green right here. I got a little bit lost track. See, even I get lost sometimes, guys. Okay, so I think that's enough of that dark tone. Now I wanna brighten it up a bit. So I'm gonna add some white to it and I'm gonna add some more yellow to it. More white. And white actually does dull colors down a little bit. It makes them more of like a pastel. Lynn said, I like that green. What is Pyrrole Red? So it looks like this. It's kind of like an orangey red. It's basically the color of the poppies. It's Pyrrole Red Light. So that is actually different from regular Pyrrole Red. And I have that paint listed in the download. So now we've got this kind of brighter, more yellowy green that we're layering in down towards the bottom. Still leaving those little windows of red poking around there. And it's easy to get carried away and cover all that red up, so you really got to think about it. And I'm probably going to do some other colors here in the background green, but this is just kind of getting started. I'm going to put this on the stem here. Kind of along that edge of the stem. All right, before we've got this one stem that's overlapping a flower. We'll put that down. Okay, before we do too much more with the background, let's start putting some color on the poppies. All right, thank you, Janine, for sharing this. And I always like to remember to ask kind of during the middle of the demo, if you guys are enjoying this demo, would you please hit the share button? You can do it while you're watching, and I think you'll still be able to stay on the video. But it helps me so much when you guys do that. I really appreciate it because it allows a lot more people to find my demos and follow my work and hopefully learn something, get inspired, and just enjoy this. So I really appreciate you guys that do share these every week. Okay, so the poppies, we are going to start painting in. My little paint bottles always get clogged. I have to take my nail and pop it open again. Janine said, did you decide on next week's painting? Oh yeah, so I put out a little survey to everybody asking what photos y'all liked best because I couldn't decide. And I'm just gonna count up the votes tomorrow morning. So if you haven't voted yet, you can find that post. I just shared 4 different photos that I'm thinking about doing for next week's paint along, so you can give your input there. So guys, this recipe of red that I just made is Pyrrole Red Light, Hansa Yellow Opaque, just a speck of it, and some titanium white. And I'm going to use this to pull out the bright highlights in the poppies here. And I switched down to my number 3 brush. And I'm just gonna look for like those areas that kind of feel like they're really nice and bright and glowing. I might need to add more white. That doesn't feel bright enough. Well, maybe I'll put this layer down first and I'll come back and make it brighter. That's what I'm gonna do. This first pass might need to dry and then I'll come back and push it a little bit brighter. But right now I'm just gonna use this for all the highlights. So I'm just kind of working my way around the flowers. And some of why this feels a bit dark maybe is because that purple's showing through. So as I build color on top of it, as this first layer dries, that'll allow the next layers to shine a little bit brighter. Thank you, Lynn, for sharing. Always appreciate it. All right, working our way around. And then I think also I'm going to put in some deeper layers of red, which will make these highlights feel even brighter because they'll be contrasted by those deep layers of red. So I say this a lot, but I think it's a really good tip. Sometimes instead of, if you want to make an area brighter, instead of actually making that area brighter, you just make the other areas around it darker and it will make it feel brighter. And the same goes for the opposite. If you want to make something feel darker, you just make everything around it a little bit brighter and you can do the same thing. So you can kind of control the way the viewer sees a color by deciding what you put around it. So you have a lot of control. And you also can decide when you are doing a piece on your own, you get to decide what you put in a painting. Sometimes there might be something in a painting that I don't feel like it works for the painting. And so my advice is just don't put it in the painting. You know, sometimes we feel compelled, like we have to, because it's there, we have to put it in. And it's not really true. And you don't want it to be something that takes away from what you're trying to do. So hopefully maybe that takes some stress away. Making a little more of this color, kind of ran out. If it's not exactly the same color, that's okay. In fact, it's even better if it's not exactly the same color because that gives the painting more dimension. Okay, down here is all kind of more of a deeper red. Got some little bits right there. Where else do I see this red? See some of it up in the background here, kind of going over those first layers of outlines that I want to get rid of. There's one more flower down at the right here, but I don't think I'm going to put it in. See, just what I was talking about. I just don't feel like I need to. Okay, we've got some of this intense red actually kind of glowing from inside the flower. Put a little bit of that in there. Maybe a little bit right here. Okay, now before I go back and put a layer of the brighter red, I'm gonna push some of the deep reds in. So I'm gonna clean off my brush. I'm going to get a drink of water because I'm losing my voice. And I'm gonna make my deep red. So the deep red, I'm going to make from alizarin crimson, which is already like a really nice burgundy color. And I'm going to put, let's see, a little bit of quinacridone magenta in there, I think. Yeah. And maybe I'll just do those two to start out with and see how that looks. So alizarin crimson, quinacridone magenta. I'm gonna look for these really deep areas of color. So where do we wanna start? I see some kind of in this shadow on this piece and more of it along here. See some in the background here of this flower that's behind. And it's okay if this kind of overlaps some of our highlights too. It's totally fine. It kind of has like a nice glazing quality when it goes over some of those highlights. When they mix together, it makes kind of a nice in-between medium red, which I think I like too. And having that base of purple really helps us to build up these colors pretty quick, because the purple really kind of accepts those different colors nicely. And this alizarin crimson is a very transparent color, so I did not add any glaze to this because it's already going to be really transparent. And we've got some shadow in this one here. Oop, I got a little bit of white on my brush, so I'm actually going to clean my brush. I didn't get white. I got this first layer of color which had white in it. I have to clean my brush off because if I got white in this recipe that I'm using right now, it would make it feel muddy because white dulls colors down. So when you're trying to glaze in a dark tone, you probably don't want to have white in that recipe because it's going to really just knock your color back. So hopefully your first layer of red is pretty dry as you're putting these tones in, and that first layer is not mixing with this dark layer that I'm adding in, hopefully. Need to make a little bit more of this recipe of the alizarin crimson and quinacridone magenta. I hope I'm saying that color right. I don't know. If I've been saying that wrong for like a year or like a year on these paint-alongs, a lot longer in life, I apologize. I think it's close. Okay. All right, I think we got a good amount of shadows in here. Maybe I'll put a little bit up here in the background. Okay, now let's go in and pull those brightest orangey red tones out. So I'm going to clean my brush off really well because I don't want to have any of those dark colors on my brush. Now I'm going to go back to my recipe for the bright red, which was Pyrrole Red Light, Hansa Yellow Opaque, and white. But now we're just going to brighten it up by adding more white. I'm just getting some fresh red because my other red is a little bit contaminated from when I stuck my green brush in it, and I don't want to get any of that green in my recipe because again that would contaminate it and ruin my recipe. So nice clean recipe of these colors, and we want to make it nice and bright. Make sure your brush isn't dirty. Okay, so we're gonna look for those brightest areas. So I see right up here, yep, That feels pretty bright. You see how that's standing out against what we've already put down? So we're looking for the areas that feel the brightest. We're gonna and actually I should tell you, don't put any glaze in this mixture. If you have already, you might want to make a new one, because we actually want this to feel really opaque because we want it to stand out against the other colors. So we want it to kind of sit on top of the other colors, and we're not putting it everywhere that we put that first layer. We're just putting it in the places where we see these brightest highlights. So put those in. Kind of just building up the color on top of what we've done. And sometimes it's helpful to squint as you're looking at your reference image to be able to see where are the areas that are the brightest. When you squint, it kind of takes out some of the extra details. Now I feel like as I go down, I feel like I want a little less white in my recipe. So I'm going to add some more yellow and some more red to it, because you can make this color brighter using yellow too, because yellow is a bright color. But I don't think I want quite as much of the white in there. I want it to feel a little bit more saturated as I go down. A little bit more of an orange, especially like this petal down here feels much more of like an orange color. And this one. And yeah, I'm gonna put some of those back here. Let's see. I'm gonna add more red to it now, because down towards the very bottom, it feels really red. I'm actually gonna go to a new spot on my palette, and this is gonna be just mostly red. I'll have a little bit of the other two colors. This is gonna be mostly red, which is the pyrrole red. And I'm going to use that to pull out some of these more intense red tones that I see down here. Let's see, we see some of this up here in this one too, and this is like our focal point flower. We see some of this intense red kind of layering into the shadows. I'm gonna drop that in. So using all these different varieties of red is what makes it start to pop. We're making our poppies pop. If you just painted these with like red and white, you know, white for the highlights and red in the darker areas, we would lose all of this like color intensity. So that's why I go to this trouble of mixing all these different varieties of red, because it really does like pay off in the long run. Okay, we might come back and put some more reds in, but for right now, I want to start getting some of these other sections painted in. I just realized a little area that I missed. There's this little window of green on the other side of this stem. You guys see it? I missed it there. It was kind of throwing me off, so I have to put that back in. I'm gonna use this dark green, and I'm gonna put that little wedge back in there. That makes more sense now. Sometimes it's like one stroke makes all the difference, but like this blossom was getting stuck in with everything else. And I'm gonna put some of this dark green on this little bud. We haven't really painted these buds in too much at all. We need some over here too. And this one is a dark green, which we haven't made yet. So let's make that dark green. And we're going to make a dark green from, what are we gonna make it from? We're gonna make it from Payne's Gray and Hansa Yellow Opaque and just a tiny speck of pyrrole red light. I'm gonna put a little glaze in there. So this is gonna be like a nice dark kind of forest green. And I'm going to use this to find this little bud that's missing right here. And there's texture on it, but we're just gonna wash it in dark first, and then we'll put some of the texture on it. And we'll use this to put the top little bit of dark on this one too. And the stem that comes down, so that little bud is kind of like poking in between this other flower. I'm gonna put this dark green on the stem, going all the way down. And on this stem, yeah, we're just gonna do that all the way down too. We're gonna put it on this one too. Okay, that anchored that flower. It was kind of floating before, so we needed that. And now we'll put some of it over on the left side of that little bud. Now the rest of this stem is not as dark as this, so I'm gonna add some yellow to it. So now it's Payne's Gray, Hansa Yellow Opaque, a little bit of Pyrrole Red, but it's gonna have a little more yellow in there than it did before. Payne's Gray, Hansa Yellow, Pyrrole Red, and I don't remember if there's any white in there. Sorry guys, I don't think there is. Okay, I'm gonna use that for this one over here that's just not quite as dark as what we've got going over there. We've got some little background ones that I haven't really put in. I'm gonna drop those in. They're not very noticeable though. Okay. All right. We have this like kind of greenish tone in the center of this one that I really haven't put in yet. And it's kind of a muted green. I think I'm gonna go back to the dark green I was using and just drop a little white in there. And I'm gonna put that in the center of that one. I'm gonna thin it out with some glaze to let the underpainting show through. And we'll just drop that little piece in. That's in the center there. Okay, now I'm gonna get a little bit more detailed. I'm just gonna switch down to my number 1. And I'm going to put there, I see some kind of fun like minty highlights that are on these little buds. And so I'm gonna make that mint color using titanium white and a little bit of phthalo green. Yeah, I think that's gonna be fun. Need a little more white. Yeah, we're gonna do just phthalo green and titanium white, which makes a very cool minty green, which is gonna almost look blue. I'm gonna drop this on to these little buds to give it a little highlight. Yeah, I like that. It's more blue than what it actually looks in the image, but I think it's gonna look pretty. We're gonna put a little highlight on the edge of this one. And also on this edge, I think. And where else can I put this little blue? Because I like it. Maybe a little bit on the top. And I almost see a little dash of it right there. And kind of in the background here, I feel like I see it kind of jumping around. Yeah, I see it popping around these flowers. Let's see, someone says, just thought of something. Is your painting a 3:4 ratio, 16:20, 4:5 ratio? Your image would have to be cropped or squeezed to fit that shape. So this is an 8:10 painting, and the reference image that I'm using is also 8:10. So I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but the templates that I make are 8:10 for everyone who is painting along with me. All right, so I'm just kind of having fun with this color in the background, guys. It feels maybe like I'm going a little bit carried away. Let's maybe stop with that for right now. I'm planning to do more blue in the background, I think, because I do like it, but I'm gonna just wait for a bit before I do, as I keep doing it. It needs one more somewhere. Okay. So there are some highlights on this little flower here that are almost like white. And oh gosh, I see why I had that message about the size. That wasn't even one of you guys. That was a Facebook message somebody sent me. Oh dear. Okay, so this little white edge that I was talking about, we're gonna make that using alizarin crimson and white, and I think just those two colors. All right. Alizarin crimson and white, just to catch that little white edge, which is gonna make kind of like a dull reddish maroon color, which we haven't really used yet. So that is kind of catching this edge. We need to be brighter. There. So we've got this little lip here of this kind of dull tone. It's kind of cutting across right there and coming along this edge. Kind of separates that piece. And I actually see this same dull color poking in through the background here. So this is alizarin crimson and white. I'm gonna put a little more alizarin crimson in it. So I think that this is gonna be nice because we've got all these really intense colors. So I think putting some of these like more muted colors in there is going to be helpful just to like kind of give our eyes a little bit of a break. Sometimes the intense colors look nicer when they've got like when you've got some room to move and to relax a bit with your eyes. So we'll put a little of that neutral back there, maybe right there. All right, I think that works. You see where my stem stops here, and I've got this poppy that's cutting in front of it. I think I need to clean up this edge to make it feel like the poppy is actually cutting in front of it. So I'm gonna go back with my red and just kind of cut over that edge to make it feel like it's in the foreground. Maybe I'll put a little burnt or alizarin crimson in there, make it a little bit darker. I just want to make it nice and opaque over that there. So I just needed it to feel like it was overlapping that. Maybe yours didn't have that little issue, but I felt like that felt a little bit weird on mine. All right. We're getting close to the end, but I had to start like 10 minutes late because of my technical difficulties, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit of extra time here. And I think I do want to kind of brighten up this top section. I feel like I want my muted green to be a little bit more minty, which will make these little mint blue colors not feel so intense if we've got it a little bit brighter up here. So I'm going to go back to a larger brush and let's see, how do I want to make that color? I'm going to make it using this green tone. I'm going to use titanium white, and I'm going to use a little bit of phthalo green blue shade, and I'm going to use some Hansa yellow opaque and more titanium white, and then just a bit of Payne's gray too to dull it a little bit. So it's Payne's gray, phthalo blue green shade, Hansa yellow opaque, and titanium white. And I'm gonna drop that in up here just to make this section feel like it's really standing out and glowing a bit more. Got some bright sections here. Actually, the background green right here is pretty bright. Where else do I see it kind of bright? Gets a little bit darker as it goes this way. But I do, yeah, I think I do like having it like that. We do see like some little pops of blue up at the very top, but I'm not sure if I want to put those in or not. You guys can decide if you want to do that. Oh, I need the little texture on this bud. I never really did that. So I need to switch down to a pretty small brush, and I'm just gonna go into my green and add a little white to it just to make kind of a nice little light muted green, put that little bit of texture on that bud. Kind of along the top. And over on this one too, we'll give that a little interest. And maybe over here, pop that in. Actually, we can use that maybe in the center here too, just to give it a little bit more structure. I think that's good. Okay, what else do we want to do? Maybe we need, I feel like this is now kind of a big jump to this bright section to over here. So I'm going to balance that out with a little bit of green that's not quite as bright as that, but a little bit brighter than this. So I'll go back to that same puddle and I'm going to drop into this brighter green that we were using, kind of mix the two together. So this more green has some yellow in it. And just put some of that over there too. I'm trying not to cover up all of my nice quinacridone magenta color because I'd like that. Okay. Now I want to go back and push my brightest orange tones another notch brighter because I still feel like I can make these little bits stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to go back to that same recipe, Pyrrole Red Light, Hansa Yellow Opaque, and White, but it's just going to be more opaque so that I can pull those out even brighter. So I'm going to put a little more white in there, nice clean white, make sure it's not contaminated, and we're going to try to pull those out even a little bit more. And if I can't get it to look brighter, I might push the background edge that's right up to it a little bit darker. We'll see what we can do. We'll see if this stands out. That seems to stand out. I wasn't sure if we could go brighter or not, but I think that helps. Sometimes it's like you've already pushed it as bright as the color will go, but you don't really know until you try. And if it won't go any brighter, then you have to come up with something else. Like putting something around it that's dark, right? But I think this is working. We got this pretty bright edge here. So we just want to make sure that this edge that feels like it's supposed to be really bright, we want to make sure that it actually is really bright. And not that the other areas are competing with it. Now down here, we talked about that's more of a yellow. So I'm going to go back and get some nice fresh yellow. I'm going to make a nice bright orange using more yellow. So we're going to do yellow, pyrrole red, and a little bit of white. And we're going to try to push this even more of a yellow tone. I think that feels pretty bright. Got some little dashes on here. Reds are actually, they're kind of tricky colors to master. So if you've ever struggled with red, it just takes on so many different, I don't know, it has a lot of character to it, I guess. So it's a challenging color to really show all the different tones of accurately. But I think we're doing a pretty good job here. These feel pretty bright. And maybe what we want to do is just push a few of the background greens a bit darker, which I think will do just kind of the finishing touch of what I'm trying to accomplish with this piece. All right, Judy says dancing poppies, I love it. Okay, so one more tone, guys, bear with me, we're almost done. Okay, so we're gonna make another green for some of these windows of the background, and we're going to make that green from Payne's Gray, which I need to get a little bit more of. If I can get my paint to squirt out. Okay, we're gonna do Payne's Gray. I need to find a clean spot on my palette. You guys notice I don't wash my palettes. I just let the paint dry. Payne's Gray, Hansa Yellow, and Pyrrole Red, and just a speck of white. A little bit more. I just want it to be a bit darker and more muted than this darker color that I had in the background. So I want this to be more of like an olive green. Let's see if this is what we got. Yeah, that's working. So if I put this right up to that bright edge, it makes the bright edge feel darker. I'm gonna clean that little bit up. And oh, we had this little guy down here that we didn't put in. And where else do I want to make it go a little bit darker? Just gonna fill in a little bit more of the red that's in the background. It felt a little bit busy in some of these areas that are open, which I think was taking a bit away from the flowers. So I always like say leave more of the underpainting showing, because you can always cover more of it up, but it's really hard to bring it back. So good thing to remember. All right. Yeah, I feel like that kind of anchored it a little bit down towards the bottom where maybe it felt like it was a bit too chaotic. All right. You know, we didn't really do any texture in the center here. You guys hang out with me for just a few more minutes while we do that. Let's do that little bit of texture. Let's make a dark color with Permanent Violet Dark. Maybe we'll just go in with Permanent Violet Dark. Let's try that. Let's try putting those little bits in with just, ooh, yeah, that's gonna look cool as we go on top of these other tones. Yep, I like it. So just kind of do some little dashes of these little pieces sticking out. And Permanent Violet Dark is a pretty transparent color, so it's going to look like more of a glaze. I like that. Violet always looks good with reds and oranges, so I guess that's why I wanted to do that for the underpainting. And we'll do that over here too. There's some little bits of it on these too, isn't there? Sometimes it's these little bits at the end that make it all come together, so that's why I never really want to stop. It's coming together though, I feel it. So again, I just have violet on my brush, and this is just kind of pulling out some of those details. Okay, I think we should probably call this one done. Yeah, that was fun. All right, thank you guys for joining me for this demo. Really quick, I want to point out the sample behind me, these eyes right here. This is part of my brand new free mini course that I just launched. And I know a lot of you are already taking it, but I want to let you guys know this is a full online class. It has videos of every step. It has printouts and downloads and all the recipes and color swatches, and I want you guys to take this class for free with me. So click the sign up button in my bio here, or you can find it right over on my website to get yourself enrolled in this free mini class. So make sure you do that. And again, thanks for joining me tonight. If you have enjoyed this demo, please go ahead and hit that share button. I always appreciate it. Comment that you shared it so that I can thank you, because that means a lot to me. And you guys are the best. I'll see you next week. We're gonna do some of the flowers that I posted yesterday, where I asked you guys which ones you wanted to paint. I had like 100 people respond. So I have to add up those tallies and see which one is the winner. And that's what we're gonna paint next week. So yeah, you guys have a great night, and happy painting.